Hi everyone, this is Jen Benasher, your board certified nutritionist, and today's topic will be how meat glue is safe on a gluten-free diet. I don't know if you ever heard the word meat glue, but if you are struggling with celiac disease or any food sensitivity, specifically to wheat and dairy, you want to stay tuned and hear what I have to say for you today and learn more how to continue supporting yourself. But before we stepping in, let's rock with some music and then let's go forward. Great, 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 great. Love it. So, what is gluten or meat glue? So, if you ever wondered why our hamburgers stored and crab meat and fish balls are looking just perfectly always fine, if you ever wondered why your chicken nuggets always looks the same and the sausages and the bacon and dairy product and even baked good all looks great, perfectly fine, then the answer is microbial transglutamase, which is an enzyme that in a few minutes I'll give you a little bit more explanation what it is. The most important thing to remember that all these processed food, even if they say it's gluten free, you have to always look at the labels and make sure that in the end of the day, it's not challenging your immune system. And today's topic will talk about that because this is the dirty secret that the food industry is using and not telling us the true answers to our health. And many individuals will try to do or being on gluten-free diet, avoid whatever they can and try to save their immune system and their health. And then they come across the steak and they don't understand why they are on a flare. So it's all driven into those little secret food substance and ingredients that the food industry is using and not necessarily telling us the whole truth and not necessarily helping us to sustain and prolong our health. So the glue meat is basically a scientific word to the microbial transglutamate, which is used in almost most processed foods, specifically meat foods, and it is definitely additive. And we need to make sure that we understand that in 2010, the European Union banned this substance from any processed food in Europe out of food safety. And here, still in the United States, in 2021, almost 2022, we are still using this substance in our food processes. This is something that we have to remember. It's there because it's sustainable, our food, and prolong the life shelf, and it makes the food taste better. That is the truth. That is the reason why they're using it. But the real question here, why it's still there and how safe it is for us. When we're asking how safe it is, we need to ask the question, how is it made of? And understanding what's basically leading to the health challenges involving with this part or with these ingredients adding to this processed food by the food industry. So just to make clear, the transglutamase, the microbial transglutamase, is an enzyme that we can find naturally in humans, animals, and plants as well. And the reason why we're using it in the food industry is because it's bind between different types of proteins, but also bind different types of proteins or pieces of proteins. And again, you want to make sure that you understand it's a biological glue that we all having, but when we are binding two different proteins together in a very artificial way, we can create another form of protein that this specific protein create immune response, specifically with these individuals that are much more prone and sensitive compared to other people in the market. And again, these enzymes are used to make the product more soluble, to emulsify the ingredients, to form the properties, to make kind of like form and shape the product and prolong the life shelf and make the texture and the volume of the product higher and by weight heavier. This is the reason why we can find this substance a lot of time as a fillers as well, like in sausages and ham, in even in steaks. They will take and they will cut two pieces of real meat, and they will emulsify that with this transglutamate enzymes powder, and creating a larger big chunk of a steak that even a butcher will have a hard time to differentiate the parts. And this is something that you have to remember, because this layer of transglutamate powder that is dry and kind of like bind between the two pieces of the meat can create an immune response to those who are more prone. And so we need to make sure that we understand that it's happening outdoor there. And if for whatever reason you get a response from a steak in a steakhouse that you had, you have to look also at the ingredients within the meat itself, not just the byproduct that so many individuals with high frustration asking themselves, why on earth I got on a flare? And for some people, it's life and death threatening, and it's not pleasant when you are facing these challenges. So the MTG, or the microbial transglutamate, is basically made from collective bacteria called Streptoverticulum, and it's collected from the blood plasma from pigs and cows, and they dry it and then creating from it a powder. This powder is not safe. You know, it's made in a lab, and it is having chemical power to bind different peptides and different pieces of peptides, protein or chunk of meat, if you want to call it. As I said before, we can form with this substance new products that never been recognized by our immune system before. And this is something that we want to make sure that we understand it's happening. Yes, there is also vegetarian solution, and you have to look for that. And like with the meat solution, the mechanism is just the same, taking two different substances and try to bind other substances together, creating more thickening and more creamier texture and stabilize the product. And we can see that with protein powders, with coffee creamers, with cheese, with ice cream even, margarines for those who are eating margarine, cereal bars, processed meat, of course, chocolate, bread as well, even if it says gluten-free. So you have to make sure that you are checking it, because you are thinking, and especially for little kids, when you eat an ice cream and you think you're giving them the right ice cream, especially if it's vegetarian, but the binding compound can create that immunity response. So you have to make sure that you're reading absolutely the ingredients and making sure that you are supporting yourself and keeping yourself safe. The other thing to ask is that by the FDA, we know that the FDA will say that this substance is safe, and they don't see any direct response or cross-link from this product into any disease. And they will specify that this is an powder or a product that can be used safely by the food industry, and it's non-allergenic, and it's non-immunogenic, and it's non-pathogenic. But in reality, and the research are showing that yes, it's true. There is no a direct impact, but there is indirect impact on uses of this substance into our health and our immune response to it. And I can say from clinical experience that those individuals that are found gluten sensitive or celiac and using processed food will not see the desired outcomes for themselves, meaning tissue healing and reduction of antibody production. And that's what I see again and again and again among people that are not fully compliant with the food intake and eating processed food, thinking that processed food is equally and beneficial equally to our health as fresh food. But you have to remember, those little hidden ingredients can create those challenges on us and challenge our immune system. So this is a good place to look at and just evaluate how much processed food you are eating, how much processed meat you are eating, and if you are and you don't see the progressive to the way that you should live without any flares, this is where you have to check in and make sure that you are supporting yourself. But the studies are showing that the more you're eating food that had been used this microbial transglutamate, we do find more people that are having more intestinal permeability and more diseases that are associated with gut issue, for example, leaky gut, for example, IBS, IBD, and even Crohn and colitis that can basically changing the protein, and the proteins are binding to the transglutamate peptide, creating lighter tight junction, leakage, increased infection, and increase more food intolerance, and definitely inflammation that can ruin people's lives' health, absolutely. And not just that, creating changes in the microbial and the bacterial growth and creating dysbiotic and definitely much more mucosal protective barrier, like loose protective barrier, and much more challenges that can even lead to further autoimmune diseases and cluster of more challenges and even cancer. And you have to remember that this is one of the biggest things that happen to people when they are not looking at the ingredients, because these unseen peptides can absolutely challenge your immune system. Another thing that we do see, and again, it's indirect, is increased gliadin uptake when you are eating the microbial transglutames as a cross-reactivity with some celiac genes peptides like HLA, DQ2, and DQ8. And the reason is cross-reactivity is a phenomena that is happening, either you like it or not. The immune system does not differentiate the parts by the source. The immune system is responding based on the amino acid sequence. And if the amino acid sequence is looking the same, immediately you get immune response. And as a result, immediately you will get much more frequent flare-up, and therefore higher inflammation, tissue deterioration, and definitely less healing and much more challenges. Of course, if that's happening, another phenomena that is happening is that the microbial transglutamase is changing our glutamine, which is our basic energy source for the intestinal and the immune system, into another enzyme that's called glutamate. And by that fact, you are challenging again and activating and stimulating your genes, specifically the celiac genes in this case, because this is the discussion. But beyond that, it does activating immune response, and immune response can take it anywhere in the body, depends on the tissues that we are talking about. And yes, the real question here, does transglutamase have to be labeled? And the answer is absolutely they have. They require to be labeled this substance, and you want to look at several letters, a combination of several letters in the labels of any product that you buy. The problem is that most of the label, if you try to read them without a glass or magnitude, you cannot see what's in it. So you want to assume that any processed food might have this substance. But if you are capable to see what's written, you want to look at the letters of capital T, capital G, or small t, capital G, or small m, capital T, capital G. So these are the sign of the ingredients statements that the food industry should put there and say that they are using this particle. They will also, if they didn't put these letters, they will need to put the words formed or shaped. And you want to expect to see that mainly in food that made in labs and any meat product and dairy product as well. So what do you want to do about that? Number one, be aware that it's a possibility that you are getting your immune response and flare up because hidden substance. And if you're not clean enough, then you may not hear it well. And if you don't hear it well, there is no way you will be able to heal your tissue, and especially if it's the tissues in the intestinal that are continue deteriorating and just flaming you. There are so many different ways to measure it, and there is so many ways to heal it. But definitely, those substances are there outdoor for us. And if you are celiac or food gluten sensitivity, you want to make sure that you are checking those ingredients and making sure that you are avoiding those substances. Obviously, I will say to you, avoid those processed food. And if you cannot avoid, try to limit it to maybe once a week, even less a month. The more you limit, the more successful you'll be. And again, my clinical experience always show that those who never been able to create their own food and eat real food never were able completely to heal. And that's something that you want to be aware of it. And if it's not hitting you today, it will hit you tomorrow. There is no other way around. So you want to be aware of the fact that those ingredients are existing, and those ingredients can lead to these more complications in the future, if not the near future. You definitely want to read the label and make sure you are avoiding any substance that says these letters and form and shape. You want to definitely choose meat and of any kind in a very natural way, and obviously organic and grass-fed. And if you can buy it from a farmer, then it's even better. And I can share with you that not just one and not just two, we had to find the farmer that will, butcher the animal and sell it directly to that very highly sensitive client. So they will avoid all these imitation and all those manipulations by the food industry to keep them safely. And especially if you are moving from wherever you are to keto and paleo, where you are eating much more protein and fat, and you are eating much more of those substances, you are creating along the road much more health challenges that you even think about it. And I would keep on saying, eat whole food, eat more vegetables, cook yourself, choose organic as possible as you can. And if you kind of like looking at your food intake, always associate those symptoms with the food that you're trying to eat, and try to find any kind of pattern that will support you to avoid the next flare up. And not just that, make sure is not the point here is not avoiding just a flare up, is supporting flare up correctly and supporting tissue that had been deteriorated for whatever reason. That's how wellness and health build up. And nothing happened over one day. It happened through times and many meals and a lot of education and a lot of practice. I will stop here and say, welcome again. If you find this information useful, share it. Tell others about this information, because together we can make the change, and together all of us will make the changes to make the food industry make right decision for our health, for our kids, for our grandchildren, and just stay tuned and stay healthy, because in the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. So looking forward to meeting you anytime soon in my next podcast. Take care.